So far, we've placed a great emphasis on culture and how we protect it, and how we may exercise it through fashion and expression. But now, I want to discuss what it is that really unifies us all under this umbrella, which is race. As we just saw through our conversation with Quentin Thrash, Black looks different from person to person, but that Blackness itself is the through line that still connects us all. And, as history would have it, it only takes one drop to be a part of it. So, I've invited scholar, activist, culture worker, and author of One Drop, Shifting the Lens on Race, Dr. Yaba Blay, to educate us on the underlying element of Blackness that unifies us no matter how we express it or what it looks like for us. Check it out.
All it takes is one drop. We know that Black folks come in all shapes, all sizes, and all colors, even in our own families, and we've come to see this as some sort of testament, if you will, to the power of Blackness. That somehow something is transmitted genetically through our blood that connects us to one another. So in many ways, we've come to accept the one drop rule as just the way it is. But at the same time, we don't necessarily see all Black folks the same or even treat all Black people the same. Given the history of racial mixing and passing and colorism in this country, we treat some lighter-skinned Black folks as suspect, like they're only Black by default or by force, assuming that they really don't see themselves as a part of us. Not for real. In the history of the United States, a Black person has been defined as any person with any known Black African ancestry. It's been called the one Black ancestor rule, the traceable amount rule, and the rule of hypodescent, but it's known most popularly as the one drop rule. The one drop rule holds that any person with any trace of Black African blood, however small or visible, cannot be considered white. They must be considered Black. Now you should know that no other racial or ethnic group has their identity defined or counted according to the one drop rule. You should also know that the one drop rule is characteristically American. No other nation classifies racial identity, specifically Black identity, this way. In fact, the one drop rule doesn't even make sense outside of the US. In many places, for a person of African descent, any one drop of anything else is enough to consider that person something else. So how is it that the United States came to adopt such a specific, quantitative definition of Black identity? Well, during the period of colonial enslavement, European enslavers were at the top of the social hierarchy and enslaved Africans were at the bottom. And for the most part, a person's position on that social hierarchy was recognized by the way they looked. If you looked European or white, light skin, slim nose, thin lips, straight hair, you were white. If you looked African or Black, dark skin, broad nose, full lips, tightly coiled hair, you were Black. And if you were white, you were free, and if you were Black, you were enslaved. Simple. But this simple social order soon became complicated by miscegenation. That is, the mixing of the races. Now, when I say mixing of races, at that time, I'm talking about the rampant rape of enslaved African women and the children they were forced to carry in birth. Those children didn't look as white as their fathers, if we want to call them that, and they didn't look as Black as their mothers, so what were they? They were referred to as mulatto. From the beginning, race mixing was viewed negatively, as were mulattoes. I'm saying it now for historical accuracy, but you should know that mulatto is pejorative. Don't say it. So the lines between white and Black were getting blurred. What to do? Whites were already a statistical minority at the time. There were more enslaved Blacks than there were white enslavers, and they were afraid of losing their control. They needed to maintain a firm color line. The one drop rule became critical in the defense of the white race. So various state governments began instituting anti-miscegenation laws. Racial mixing became illegal. In 1662, the state of Virginia passed one such law, proclaiming that, listen to it, any sexual intercourse between a white and a Black was twice as evil. Racial mixing was seen as a threat to the survival of the white race. The one drop rule helped to maintain white purity. So when it came to classifying mixed race children, anti-miscegenation laws followed the common law applicable to farm animals. Mulattoes born to enslaved mothers were relegated to slave status. It ain't matter if your daddy was white. If your mama a slave, you a slave. And the more mixing, the more difficult it was to just look at a person and know whether they were free or enslaved. And this was a huge problem for the social order of things. And because wasn't nobody pulling out your family tree to figure out who was who and what was when, all of those exact quantifications ultimately came to be understood as one drop. Anyone with any black ancestry was black, and they were treated as black, and they were denied the privileges of whiteness. By 1925, almost every state had some form of a one-drop law on its books, and until 1967, it was illegal to marry outside of your race. 1967. For generations, the one-drop rule not only helped to maintain the so-called purity of the white race, it helped to maintain white power. Although the one-drop rule was ruled unconstitutional in the 1967 Loving versus Virginia case, it lives on. In many ways, the one-drop rule has become the core of black racial identity, particularly in the United States. It's created the black race and the black community as we know it today, and it's come to define not only the history of blackness in the United States, but the racial history of the United States.